And naturally, I'm a Tottenham man, obviously. I can reflect back to being a player with and manager of some of the finest players that have ever been in the game.
The place is fantastic, the tradition of this club.
To be the manager of 3 cup-winning teams here, I'm so lucky, it's untrue.
Hotspur America podcast, airing every week during the English Premier League season.
What a glory, glory night at Hart Lane. This great and historic football club. Down the Tottenham High Road.
Hotspur America, the original US-based podcast dedicated solely to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Gascoigne going to have a crack. He is, you know. Oh, I say! Schoolboy's own stuff.
I hate Arsenal, just hate them.
Oh, what a goal! Unbelievable! Wow, this is incredible.
We're the Yids in America.
This is there to tap in. What a fantastic run. He scored! And it's turned home. Eric Dyer.
This is your Hotspur America. Season 4, episode 19 of the Hotspur America podcast. Coming off a little bit of a downer with another draw, this time against Watford, but we have a wonderful show planned for you this afternoon. Firstly, as always with me, the chairman of the Dallas Spurs Supporters Group, Simon. My friend, how are you?
Surprisingly good spirits, my man.
And no reason we shouldn't be. We should not be. We gave away a wonderful ball signed by the club today to Christopher Richard, one of our members, in charity with Jared Sandler, combined with the Texas Special Olympics organization. He's doing a charity golf tournament for them tomorrow. Very excited to be a part of that, and it was nice to see him get that opportunity. Also joining us on the show today, author, Spurs fan, and just recently wrote the White Hart Lane story, the Spurs Glory Years, 1899 to 2017. He is also the deputy head of sport for the Sun, Mr. Martin Lipton. Thank you for joining us today.
A absolute pleasure. Really looking forward to it.
You're currently in the Bahamas right now, right? Enjoying some.
I am. It's not too bad a life. I'm at the Hero World Challenge, just outside Nassau in the Bahamas. I have been watching Tiger Woods struggle, it has to be said, this afternoon.
Oh no!
But no, it's a fabulous place. I've been at. I'm having a brilliant time. It's a shame I've got to go home, but I think I need to see my wife and kids. So that's tomorrow night. I'm getting back on the flight to Heathrow.
Lovely.
And is that the roar of the ocean we can hear in the background, just to make us all really jealous?
No, it's just the wind, actually.
Oh, okay.
And the air conditioning.
So I was giving you an in there to just say yes, absolutely, and it's the swaying palm trees.
Pina colada in one hand. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You should try the Grey Goose vodka drinks
lovely.
at the golf club we've been playing, the Royal Blue Golf Club. Absolutely fabulous place. It's been a thrill to play there, and we've been treated royally by them. It has to be said.
That's great.
Very nice. Hey, listen, I've read some of this book. I've also listened to some of our friends over at the Spurs Show. You were recently on with them, Theo Delaney,
yes.
and a few of our very good friends over there. And I've looked at some paper interview also that you've done. One of the things that I really took away from that was that this was not only a chronicle or a history, the book of Tottenham Hotspur going backwards in time, but it was also a partly your own personal history with the club as well. And I want you to expound on that as we get started, just to give some background on how this project got started.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be a straight history, because, to be honest, and I certainly didn't want it to be a straight chronology either, because I think it could be a bit dull. You just go, and it could be a bit, and this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. The reason I wanted to write the book was I wanted to leave something for my boy. My boy's just turned 8 now, but he won't really have known White Hart Lane. I've got him into being a Spurs fan, but he only went on a handful of occasions, and I wanted him to become aware of the golden inheritance, really, because my father took me as a boy. I'm now taking him as a boy, and I just thought that it's not just my family. This is the family the story that so many families, Spurs supporting families, have. They've spent generations going to the game, going to the ground, sharing stories. And I thought it was, an idea just to try and share some of those stories. What the club means to people. The fact that your recollection of events may not be entirely accurate, but it makes them no less real, because what you remember is what happened as far as you are as an individual concerned, even if it's actually slightly hazy and slightly off. So I thought, well, I talked to lots of people, former players, former managers, former employees, people, fans as well, just to try and see if other people thought basically the same way I do about the club and what it means. And it obviously coincided with the cranes and bulldozers going in at the end of last season. So that was quite a difficult moment for me, and that's why I ended the book with that final chapter, because I thought it had to end on that day, and I was lucky enough to be sat amongst the former players who went onto the pitch at the end of the match. I must admit, I didn't go onto the pitch at the end of the match. I just stood there and watched and had an incredible day. Just, I was sat with Ledley King next to me and Peter Crouch the other side, and it was, players who I've got to know through their careers, for other, for England and for other clubs as well as Tottenham. And I wanted just to see people agree with me really about what the club means, because I think it means an awful lot.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's fitting to end the book with that chapter and the final day. So let's talk about the first time you went, and we were kind of going back and forth before we went on air. So tell us about your very first game and how that was as you were a youngster, and then obviously you talked about taking your son a few decades later.
Yeah, it was October 1972. Home game against Stoke City. We lived in Walthamstow, and for those who know London, it's about 3 miles away from Tottenham along the North Circular Road. This is inner orbital road through around the whole of London. And we got in my dad's car, and my dad was very young. He was only 20 when he had me, so he was still a young man, really. And he took me in his car, and he was a chain smoker at the time, and this was the time when no one wore seat belts. And it was the busy roads weren't busy. It was a very different London to now. And he took me to this game, and I was just blown away as we had this situation to get into the ground. He was determined he would park basically next to the ground. He wouldn't do any walking. He didn't believe in walking, my father. He still doesn't believe in walking that much, although he tries a bit more. He lives in the States himself, and he lives in Kissimmee near Orlando. So
okay.
He doesn't see many games, obviously, other than on the telly. But he would blag his way, con his way past the police by claiming that we were visiting my grandmother, his mother. And he pulled it off because, as it happens, as he knew, his mother was living in South Africa at the time, and my other grandmother was still living in Walthamstow, so they weren't very close to the ground, and yet we managed to get in. And then first of all, so we had that experience, which became the consistent one throughout all those early childhood years. But then the actual event of the day, going up, standing on the shelf. It's a sunny day. It wasn't that cold. I remember that's all that I do remember. But seeing the pitch, and I'm sure it wasn't as green as I remember. I'm sure it wasn't as stand out, as verdant, as intensive an experience as I recall it. But I'll always recall it that way. And I remember not much about the game other than that we were there. I remembered the score. I had to look up who scored. I see John Fatt got 2 goals. I remember that the Gordon Banks was playing in goal for Stoke. So there were 3 World Cup winners on the pitch, because there were Gordon Banks and Jeff Hurst for Stoke, and Martin Peters for Spurs, because obviously Martin had arrived a couple of years earlier in the swap deal that sent Jimmy Greaves to West Ham. So 3 World Cup winners, and this was only 6 years after the World Cup, where people expected England to win the thing, as opposed to now when people hope they might get through a group stage occasionally. And I was hooked. Absolutely, and we didn't go every week. I'm not going to claim we did, but we did go pretty regularly. I remember going to the '73 League Cup final with my dad, standing behind the goal when we won 1-0. Fact got injured early that day, and Ralph Coates came on and then scored the winner with a sort of a bobbly one into the corner past, I think Kevin Keelan was the Norwich goalkeeper. And that was it. That was the beginning of a 45-year enduring, ongoing, and hopefully to be extended love affair with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
That's an awesome memory. And you know, as you said, you took your son Ollie to his first game in 2014.
Which was also against Stoke. Absolutely.
Yeah, I read that.
Lovely, actually.
Yeah.
Not quite as good a performance. I think it was probably the worst 45 minutes I've ever seen from a Tottenham team in the first half. And they ended up losing 2-1. It was a good goal by Chadley, actually, a volley from a deep cross by Rose.
Yeah.
But, and I was, because I've been pushing Spurs at him. His mum's from Northern England, from Bolton, and she's wasn't massively pushed about it, so I was able to convert him. We live in a pretty Chelsea area, and I basically said to him, you can support anyone except Chelsea or Arsenal. That helped, but Fulham was an option. But I was pushing him towards Spurs, and I took him. And the buzz and excitement on his face, and even though they didn't play well, I said to him afterwards, so what do you think? And they'd lost 2-1 and not played very well. And there's a little bit, that's killed it. And he said, can we come next week? And that was all I needed, really.
Hooked.
Absolutely, another
hooked.
one. And he knows more than I do. He brings me up and tells me where they went wrong, when I'm away, or as soon as I get in the house if I miss the game. He gives me everything, chapter and verse. It's brilliant. And I really love it. I think it's because we didn't see football. We saw highlights of 40 minutes on a Saturday, and you might get they only showed 2 games of highlights. And if there were 11 games to choose from, they didn't. So Spurs weren't on that often because there's only so many games that were shown. Whereas now every single kick can be seen. So he's far more knowledgeable as an 8-year-old than I could possibly have been.
It's interesting that you talk about Stoke being the first match and all that. It was also mine. 2015, I went over. Simon, I guess, called. We chatted or something. We came later in the week because we went to the Hull City match that closed out the season. And you said, yeah, we were all in the pub, and we were like, I can't believe Ken's actually there watching this. That was my pilgrimage over, was that 3-0 defeat to Stoke. It wasn't a rainy Wednesday night in Stoke, but it may as well have been because it was god.
There was a red card, wasn't there, as well?
Yeah, I believe so.
Kabul.
Yes.
We were very poor. End of season, very, very ordinary. Yeah.
So during the course of this project and writing the book, Martin, you had a lot of open access to the club and whatnot. So you got to speak with players, both past and present, club officials, other press personnel, pundits, and even the manager. Was it those conversations that were more telling for you, or was it maybe a casual conversation with, say, a kitman or a steward or a groundsman, which may have offered you more insight?
I think all of it comes together in that what you want to take from it is the enduring appeal of the club. And in some ways, the best chats were with the former players because A, they've got more perspective, and B, in some ways, because they're not worried about what they say, they're more interesting as well. And I've nothing against the modern players. They're fine, they're great, and they talk really well, but they are living in the moment. And so that is the difference, I find. And I had a long 3-hour chat with Irving Scholar, the former chairman, who showed his just schoolboy enthusiasm. He's on the wrong side of 70, but he sounds like he's 17. He's that excited still about his memories of. He could tell you his seat number and everything else from 50, 60 years ago, and that's what the club means. That's what I was interested in depicting and delineating, that essence of why people wanted to go to watch that team. And even when they were playing poorly, even when there was nothing to see that was worth watching, they would go. And they would believe that next time it could be better. And it's that hope and faith, that enduring belief in possibility that football's all about, because not everyone can pick a winning side. Not every team can win it. Unless, if you were a Manchester United supporter for 20 years, it was easy because you never lost.
Right.
But being a City supporter for those 20 years was really tough. It's why I don't begrudge City's success now, because they've had it worse than we have. They really have, you know.